Well, I am so excited to be here and share with you a message about joy, but I'm probably going to cry. So I'll let you know that from the start that I am speaking about joy this morning and the joy that is incredibly offered to us through our Savior. Pastor John, just a few weeks ago, we get together in staff meetings on Thursday, and they're on Zoom because of me. I have a couple of different jobs, and we get the opportunity to just love on one another as a team and pray together. And we were just talking, and he said, Tanya, with everything that's going on right now, how are you coping? How are you finding strength in the middle of everything? We're talking about our neighbors and friends being kidnapped by mass people, all the floods that have happened, the fires, all of the tragedy that surrounds us all the time. The things that we're carrying, even families fighting against families, people not speaking to each other over politics, people feeling invisible, rights being eroded. How are you dealing with all of this? And I said, I have been really trying to center joy. And I'm trying to look back at all of the movements of life, all of the things that have happened where there has been resistance, and see where the joy is. I keep asking, where is the joy? Centering joy seems kind of bananas right about now with all the things that are going on, but we must, because when the world is on fire, we just have to center joy and remember, why are we here? I think about my indigenous friends who had their land stripped away, their languages, their customs, and how they sing and they dance, and they rely on ritual and food to bring them together. And then I also think about my enslaved ancestors just suffering under such weight and still being able to overcome and overcome and overcome. And how did they do it? I keep looking back. Jim Crow, and now the new Jim Crow. How are we making it? How are we still having hope? And I just keep thinking about the joy. When I look at any history of any oppressed people, and even those that experience environmental hardship, I see the centering of joy as survival. Some of you know, I mentioned just a few moments ago that I have a couple of jobs. I'm on this staff, but I am what's called a bivocational pastor. I'm barely here, maybe a few hours a week, but I get the opportunity to walk alongside people, to help make decisions for our church, to love on people. But I also work for an organization called Step by Step. Many of you know. Many of you in this room support Step by Step. And this church supports Step by Step every month. I work with young single mothers, ages 12 to 24. Yes, I said 12. And these moms just keep being in this place of resilience, and they keep overcoming and keep overcoming. And every Thursday night when we get together, there's laughter, and we're just in a space where we're holding joy for one another. One of my other jobs is as a consultant. I do facilitation all over the country, and my favorite thing is to put Republicans and Democrats in a room and make them love each other. It's my favorite. So great. And I work for several different organizations, but one of the ones that I work for is called Horizons Project. And they are gatherers. They gather people, and they always have these different events that people can come to meet one another and find solidarity and find how to bring people together and how to save democracy. And so I get to facilitate rooms full of people, and it is always so joyful. And so I was explaining to the staff that what I get to see is people that are not giving up. That when we see the news, we see all of the horrible things that are happening, there is a contingent of people. God always leaves a remnant. There's a remnant of people who are fighting for you, and you don't even know they're fighting for you. And some of them are super subversive, so you never know, but they're doing the thing. And one of the people that I facilitate on a regular basis at Horizons Project is named Sherry, and Sherry is just doing such incredible work to bring people together. And Sherry sits, and she's just this humble person, and I just sit at her feet and soak up everything. I'm supposed to be facilitating, but I'm learning from all of these people. And Sherry one day just mentions, when my mom was hanging out with Dr. King, and I'm like, what now? Her mom is Diane Nash, and she passed away, but Diane Nash was, if you recall your history, she helped start SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and she did so many things. You hear about all of the things, the lunch counter sit-ins, she helped organize, Freedom Riders, she helped organize and was a part of, and Sherry is just like this still freedom fighting. You see her, and she talks about how her mom and her dad sent her joy in everything that they did. Being hosed, being bitten by dogs, being arrested, being harmed on a regular basis, and she talks about how they centered joy. And so I get to be in these spaces with people like that. We went to Alabama recently, and we went to the Equal Justice Initiative. Many of you might know that as the Lynching Museum, which was really hard to go through. As I kept walking through the Lynching Museum, up in the ceiling is where all the names of the counties are, where people were lynched all over America. And I got to Kentucky, and it was overwhelming. And I just sat and wept. And then we come out, and I'm like, how do you center joy when you see this? Where is the joy? And as I'm going through the museum, I'm seeing art, and I'm hearing music, and I'm seeing people smile and laugh. And one of the things that the group got to do was go to the Dr. Richard Harris's house in Alabama. And his daughter does tours of the home, and she was 12 years old when all of this was happening. And she remembers being in trainings where she had to learn what to do when people were pouring hot coffee on her. And she had to learn what to do as a 12-year-old if people were going to threaten her life, and how to not react, and how to stay nonviolent. And she walks through the house, and there's a second floor, and she talks about how, in most people's second floor, you walk up the stairs, there's like a little landing, and she said, my dad took that out, and he made a bar. And people would come, like Ella Fitzgerald, other people would come, and we would sing songs, and we would laugh, and we centered joy. And I started to see this picture of how do you overcome when you're beaten down again and again and again, and people don't even believe that you're human. You center joy. And so I got to hear about that in this work that I get to do. And then here in this space, I get to see it every day. People who are suffering in our community walk through these doors, and they feel like they're at home, and there's laughter, and there's a meal on Monday nights, and people are sitting around tables loving on each other. And there's people that sit outside, and they're sleeping outside, and you walk up, and you're smiling, and you're laughing with them, and we're centering joy. And so I found that in studying it, it helps me to put some perspective on how we get over, how we get through. And I know I needed this too in my own personal life. And so I'm gonna share a few things about some things that have been going on with me in my life. And so I wanna give a content warning. I would need you to take care of yourself. If you need to get up and walk out, nobody is gonna look at you strange. I'll be talking about domestic violence, and I'll be talking about child abuse. So on January 22nd, 2024, my life and the life of my family changed forever. It snowed in Fayette County Public School, and once again, I always get kind of anxious when it snows and they talk about NTI days, because I know that these young women that I work with, they are shift workers. And so if school's called out and they have to stay home, they don't get paid, which means then they can't pay their rent. And so I always think about that. So I had a million things on my mind that morning, but one of my sons had somewhere else that he could be, and one of them didn't, and so he stayed home with his dad. And that morning was just like an ordinary morning for us. We laughed, we hugged, we kissed. I left for work with a full heart, but also thinking about these moms, and not knowing that by the end of the day, everything in my life would change. And some of you know you hadn't seen me around for a while, so I'm about to explain why I'm not here as often. At the time, I was working those jobs and trying to provide for my family, and my husband had his own, he's self-employed, and he was struggling financially, and so he got to stay home and help out around the house, and he said, I'll just stay home and help with the NTI schoolwork. And we thought, this is gonna be a bonding day for him and our son. So I went to work and worked all throughout the day, checked in occasionally every once in a while, but just worked. And then on the way home, I called and I said, hey, we're on our way home. I picked up my other son. I said, what's for dinner? And he said, no, you tell me what's for dinner. What are you making? And I said, well, I thought you guys would make something. You'd been home all day together. I thought y'all would make something. And he screamed at me and hung up the phone. So I knew something was wrong. And I walked through the front door, and I felt it. The energy was way off in our house. I'd never been afraid of my husband before. But that night, there was screaming. He was following me around the house, calling me names. The kids were there, and I kept trying to protect the kids and try to send them upstairs, and they didn't want to go. They were trying to protect me, these small children. He just wasn't himself. So I called his dad, and I said, you need to come get him. Those of you who know our story know that we don't call the cops in our neighborhood unless something is really like somebody's dying. So I said, come get your son. There's something that's off, and I need him to be gone. We stayed up all night. The kids were terrified. They were crying and screaming, and they had never slept in the bed with us before. That night, they slept in the bed with me, and we stayed up for most of the night talking and me trying to calm them down. And my kids are neurodivergent, so they love to have routine. And so the next morning, I debated, should I send them to school? Should we stay home? I don't even know what to do next. This is all so foreign to me. I don't know what to do. And I said, no, they need their routine, so I'm going to go ahead and send them to school. And so I called the school, and I actually explained what happened. I sent some emails to the teachers and said, this is what happened last night in our home, but I'm going to go ahead and send them, and if I need to come get them today, I'll come get them. So later that day, I got a call from an educator, and she said that one of my sons had disclosed that he had been physically and verbally abused the day before, throughout the NTI day. A 20-minute lesson took the entire day, and throughout that day, he was mistreated over and over and over again. So the educator told me, because I know who you are, I know what you do in the community, I'm not going to report it. But all of us, if you don't know this, every adult in Kentucky is a mandatory reporter, and I actually teach that a lot. And I said, no, you have to report it. You're a mandatory reporter. I need you to report it. So days later, a social worker arrived at our home, and everyone got interviewed, and it was confirmed that my husband had abused our son. I had already asked him not to come back to the house after that time, after that night, and said, you gotta go get some help, you gotta get something together. But when the social worker confirmed it, I was shocked. My children had already endured so much trauma before we adopted them through foster care. We'd been through every training that you could ever imagine for years and years and years as a couple. And in the days that followed, I kind of felt like one of those movie montages of myself, of those films where you see somebody who's just so shocked and they're brokenhearted. It was all about memories replaying and all these beautiful memories of our lives, and I just was in shock. I couldn't understand it. I kept seeing memories of our courtship where he had asked permission to date me. He asked my pastor, my mom, my best friend, because he was so interested in me. I remembered our community-centered wedding where we went door to door in our neighborhood and invited our entire neighborhood to our wedding and had a big carnival and loved on our neighbors, and we asked, don't give us gifts, we ask you to bring clothes and shoes and toiletries for our neighbors, and we just had a blast. I thought about how we invited people into our home for something called Heinz Breakfast every Saturday morning, and people loved on each other, and everybody from the mayor to sex workers walked into our home and had pancakes and waffles together. I thought about how loving and kind that he was to me and to our children. And I was paralyzed because I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something. I had to make some moves. Everything seemed like a whirlwind, and we decided on supervised-only visits, and I had to try to find childcare, and I was learning that I'm a single parent during this time, and it was such a hard transition from having a partner to being a solo parent, all while trying to love on my kids and let them know that this behavior, although that they were very loved by their dad, this behavior wasn't loving. I discovered what the problem was. Alcohol and drugs, and I had no idea. Addiction, substance use disorder. And you could have knocked me over with a feather, completely blindsided. So I involved us in intensive therapy, all of us, and we had conversations with the kids, and then the blame started to shift to me, not only from him, but from his parents. You're just not home enough. That's why this is happening. You're working too many jobs to provide for the family. And so there was so much guilt and shame, and I didn't want to tell anyone, but I knew that I needed to. The kids needed people. I needed people. And still, I continued to extend grace. I was paying his bills. I brought his groceries, told him how much I loved him every single day. I was praying for him to be healed and for our family to be restored. Then our basement flooded, and there were $30,000 worth of damage. I had to get a new HVAC system. I had to get 2 sump pumps installed, and I had to handle all of that by myself. I'd never handled any of that stuff. I was exhausted, working day and night, but also managing the kids and managing abuse. I waited because I really thought that he would get it together, and he didn't. And after another incident of abuse, I made the decision, the hardest decision of my life, to divorce him. Since then, he's rejected his faith. He doesn't believe in God anymore. The man who washed my feet at our wedding doesn't believe in God. He's rejected recovery, and he's turned his pain into bitterness. And he says that he has nobody that cares about him and nobody that's there for him, even though we are. And all through it, there's been these really beautiful moments of people showing up for us, but also us together. We take family trips together. We have family movie night every Friday night, and there's these glimpses of the most beautiful family. But it's also gotten harder and harder. Even just this past Friday night, there was another incident of name-calling and anger where I had to ask him to leave. But through it all, God's carried me. I have learned to set really good boundaries. I've learned that my children and I are survivors of domestic violence, and I have learned that surviving is a sacred act of resistance. And this church has been such a gift to me. There are days, I'll be honest, where I'm just too exhausted to even clean my house. I was talking to somebody about that earlier this morning. There are days that I question why this has to be this way, but I look at my children and I see their joy returning. And I see mine, too. I see them healing, and I see myself healing. When the world tells us to give up, God whispers, I'm not done with you yet. That's an amen, thank you. When people walk away, God still remains. You cannot control people, but you can control yourself. When the pain is too much, his grace is always sufficient. And I share this not to say that I've got it all together. God is faithful in the fire. That's what I know. And even when the storm rages, even when the floods come, even when you're holding your children through tears, God is still God. And he is still good, y'all. So how am I surviving all of this? I have made a conscious decision to lean into that joy that I've been studying. It is not performative joy. It is not surface-level happiness. I've been looking for the kind of joy that the world cannot take away because it didn't give it in the first place. The kind that shows up in the most broken spaces and holds you when everything is falling apart. That kind of joy is holy. Jesus speaks to this kind of joy in John 15, 5-11. He says at one point, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me, my joy may be in you, and your joy may be complete. That's like a strange concept to think about everything falling apart, and you just have to hold on to this moment with God and believe it, even when it doesn't even look like it. You have to believe it. And so I remain on that vine. I'm in my word. I'm praying. I'm desperate for him every single day. It's not a surface happiness, but it is a complete joy that is rooted in Christ. And so I'll say one of the things that I recommend, there's probably 3 things I would say. One is to root your joy in God, not in people. The psalmist says in 16:11, you make known to me the path of life. You will fill me with your joy and your presence. And I need that joy every single moment. The Hebrew word for joy is chedva, and it means rejoicing. Not happiness based on the good day that you're having, but rejoicing in the face of real pain. We're Christians. We don't mourn as the world mourns, right? And I don't mourn like the world mourns because I have a God that's bigger than everything that I'm going through, everything my kids are going through. There's no way I can make it without God, not one way, without centering Christ, without remembering his sacrifice and how, even in the midst of soul-crushing anxiety, I can engage in the spiritual practices that bring me out of it, that centers him and not me, and reminds me to whom I belong. So I worship. Y'all should see me in my kitchen. I'm a mess, worshiping like recklessly. I'm worshiping all the time, and it brings me back to who I am and who I'm centered, and there is so much joy in worship. I'm so grateful to our worship pastor, Laban, who continues to just center the things of God as he chooses even the songs that we sing, and they are all just so good. And I'm back there worshiping. The second thing I would say is I have reclaimed the celebration as resistance. I've got to celebrate people's birthdays. Invite me to your kids' birthdays, because I'm coming to celebrate. Got to be a part of a beautiful wedding here not too long ago, and I was there for the celebration. Thinking of going through all of this heartache, and I'm like, ooh, this wedding is healing. I'm going to be in a wedding at 50 years old. I'm going to be a bridesmaid in a little bit in November, and I'm like, where's my dress? I'm going to look cute, y'all. I'm celebrating. Those places in celebration, I can't forget those, because that is where God lives. Every day I look for something to bring me joy, and I take note of it. If you follow me on social media, you see my joy all the time. Those two little boys, they are wild and hilarious. This morning they were practicing worship, and they were running around and just bringing so much joy. I have to reclaim that celebration of their lives as resistance to the moments that I don't even know what to do with my grief and my pain. Grief and joy are not mutually exclusive. You can experience incredible joy in the middle of your grief. The third thing I'd say that's helped me a lot is choosing community over isolation. Even standing up here this morning is an act of resistance for me. To be able to say my life is not over, my kids' lives are not over, and nor is the man that I married, his life is not over either. I still believe that God can redeem his life. I am still praying that he walks through those doors one day and allows y'all to embrace him. But I can't do it without community. Hebrews 10:24-25 reminds us, let us consider how we may spur one another on, not giving up meeting together, but encouraging one another. Y'all encourage me. Just being in the house of the Lord. I also have this app called Marco Polo. Y'all, raise your hand if you know Marco Polo. I see some of my people out there. I get on this app, Marco Polo, and it's like this, you'll be able to leave video messages for people, and I love it because I'm so busy that nobody's like in the middle of a text. It just feels so urgent. But on Marco Polo, I can wait until I'm ready and look at it. And I have friends in Los Angeles who encourage me every single day on Marco Polo and keep me laughing. They know everything that's happened, and they're there for me. I have my team at Step by Step. They pray all over me. We laugh, we cry together, and it is about that community. It's not just breaking bread together, but it's just being together in the things that we're carrying. And then, as I mentioned, this church, it was really hard for me to walk through those church doors without my husband. And I will say, I walked in, and one of the first people I saw was Pastor Rick. And he just let me cry all over him. Knowing everything that was going on, he let me cry all over him. Dustin Pugel's mom, Tina, showed up one morning out of the blue, and I just laid it all over her, and she shared her testimony with me and shared that I can get through it and I will get through it. Camry Miller reaches out to me on Instagram, of all places, sends me a meal and loves on me, checks up on me. It is such a gift to know that this church really is doing what they say they're going to do. Elliot Buckner, some of you know Elliot, that comes on Monday nights. They reached out to me and said, hey, let's go out on a vacation together. And we took the kids and went out to Holiday World, and it was so amazing. This church, being in community, reaching out to your community will change your life. The amount of transparency and vulnerability that I practice with safe people is a direct result of the Christ that I love. Being in this community makes it better, y'all. It just does. Making the choice to divorce my husband, whom I actively am still madly in love with, the one that I shared my vows with before God, knowing that I'm in pastoral care, felt really embarrassing and shaming and simply unbelievable. But I kept saying, I am doing this for my kids. I'm doing this for my kids. I'm choosing my kids. And one day, one of my friends on Marco Polo shared, yeah, but you need to be doing this for you too. That's community. Reminding you of who you are and what you need, that's community. That truth-telling and accountability can bring you joy that leads to freedom. I also want to talk about sharing grace. Even though many of you have reached out to him, my ex-husband has said, nobody loves me, nobody cares about me, and I know y'all have reached out to him. Keep praying for him. God is going to get him. It's not my job, but keep praying. He's in a place of hurt and pain, and there's no judgment here. I love that man with all my heart, and you should love him too. Joy is holy defiance. It is not naive. Joy is not delusional. Joy is not pretending your stomach is full when you haven't eaten. Joy is not disassociating when your heart is broken. Joy is testimony. It is a weapon. Joy is an overcoming antidote to the despair that's in this world, even when the world seems upside down. Joy shows up in the hospital waiting rooms, in the courtrooms, under the rubble, in hunger and in grief. It shows up when you wake up one more time and say, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. There's some scriptures that I've been meditating on, and I think they're going to be on the screen, that I want to share with you, or anybody that's going through something really hard where your world's upside down. And statistically speaking, that's more than me in this room. Romans 15:13, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him. That's our promise. We get to have joy even when things are hard, y'all. Philippians 4:4, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice, right? Psalm 16, 9 through 11, you got to put that down. You will fill me with joy in your presence. Y'all, I'm filled with joy going through the hardest stuff in my life because I'm making a choice to look for the joy. Before I close, I do want to share that if you are experiencing emotional, sexual, physical, any kind of violence in your household, manipulation, or if you are suffering with substance use disorder, this church has resources. I have resources. I am glad to talk with you. I am glad to connect you with resources, something that I do. You can't do it alone, though, and we weren't meant to. Even the Trinity shows us that, right? They're always together, except for the one time Jesus was on the cross saying, you've forsaken me. Always together. We were built for community. You can't do it without community. There's an artist, a Christian artist named Morgan Harper Nichols. And just like Emily Posey is an incredible artist and Cameron Miller is an incredible artist, we need the artists, y'all. But she does this great work, and she's always saying some incredible things in the work. And I just want to share this poem. I think it might be up on the screen. For whatever sorrow finds you, may joy find you too. And though the future is lined with unknowns, I hope it is also lined with hope. Many you find, or may you find, small reminders of peace right here in the chaos of things. For I cannot tell you what will happen, but things will be different in the morning. When the sunlight pours in and will feel warmth on your skin that reminds you no matter the times you have felt lost, you are free to start again. May you always slow down and notice when joy shows up in unexpected places. This week, I'd like to leave you with a couple of things to kind of cultivate some joy for yourself. Besides, one of the ones is definitely looking at history and the resistance and where they had joy. You don't hear that very often. You hear about the riots, you hear about the counters, the lunch counters. You don't hear about the joy very much. I encourage you to seek out those joy moments because that's what's sustaining me. But here's some things that you can do this week. Take 5 minutes a day to sit in God's presence and ask him for joy. Ask him to show you spaces of joy. If you're not experiencing joy, ask for it. He will show up. Celebrate something, anything, as resistance. Celebrate. Call someone and remind them they are not alone. Many of you have reached out to me. Many of you have reached out to him. That is what we do as the body of Christ. Call somebody. If they're on your mind, call them. Practice vulnerability with a friend. This is my joy moment. This is real vulnerable, y'all, in front of my church. Practice vulnerability with a friend. There have been many times in my life where there have been people that have been pastors to me or people in positions of leadership that never show their vulnerability, and I don't trust them. Transparency is real. With boundaries, y'all know everything. I gave y'all a lot, but y'all know everything, okay? You gotta keep those boundaries. But there are people who know everything in my life because I trust them with it. Because joy is not the absence of struggle, it is the presence of God in the middle of it. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.